Certified financial planner professionals are certified to provide comprehensive financial planning that can address just about any facet of one's financial life, including retirement, estate planning, taxes, education, and more. For more info, go to letsmakeaplan.org to find a CFP professional for you.
Yeah, for those of you keeping track of my Mamba progress, I had to abandon the black coffee. I just couldn't take it. I felt like it made me manly, but life is too short.
So you're not going to drink the Black Insomnia we talked about in the first hour, the most powerful coffee in the world?
No, it can cause heart palpitations.
Yeah, 58 milligrams of caffeine.
I will take a sip of it. I would like to see what it tastes like, but I will stop there.
You can take that before the workout.
I could. I'll take that before the workout. Just a sip. I'm having a sip of that before the workout.
Now, lower than that was Death Wish coffee, something, Mike, that you have been looking into, right?
I had picked them up on social media a while ago, so I'd been familiar with the brand. The skull and crossbones on the bag sets a strong tone.
So Matt tweets in that he drinks Death Wish coffee every couple of months. So not the Black Insomnia, but the Death Wish, which is a step lower.
It lasts a couple of months?
Yeah. I drink Death Wish coffee every couple of months, and it's intense, but not as intense as it seems, but it does make my face tingle. It's really not what I'm looking for in my cup of coffee, though that would be an experience.
I tell you what, as someone who's on the air at 4 a.m., that excites me greatly.
You want your face to tingle? Yeah.
Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, Brucey Bowen on the way, Doris Burke, Grant Hill coming today. Mike Golic Jr. is in our studio right now in the middle of a conversation about Colin Kaepernick, because this is a very interesting topic to me. I have heard a lot of people in the know write some very interesting pieces suggesting that it is a quarterback of his accomplishment and with his numbers, the notion that he is not currently on a roster clearly demonstrates that he is being blackballed. And I've heard a lot of people whose opinions I value arguing the other side of that. I think both are, my own opinion is that both are a little bit true. I'll explain that in a moment. But first, we talked about Kyle Shanahan's take on this. Mm-hmm. Let me read you what Chip Kelly said, because Chip Kelly was his coach last year. And this is from MMQB. He talked about whether or not Kaepernick can be an effective quarterback. Quote, "He's big, athletic. He can hurt you both throwing and running. The last couple of years he was banged up. I think he's going to be better next year than he was this past year because physically he will be better." Remember, he didn't start last season because there were injuries going in, and they started with Blaine Gabbert, but he took over a few games into the season. Then maybe the most important part of this, on whether all of the issues surrounding Colin Kaepernick were a distraction to the team. Because that's the word, that's like a catch-all phrase that NFL people love to use. Everything can fall into this bucket of distraction. Chip Kelly said there was zero distraction. He met with the team immediately after his first protest. He met with the other team leaders. He explained his position and where he was coming from, and literally that was it. Colin was focused on football. He was all about the team and trying to help us win. When Colin is with us, he is 100% football. There's not, "Hey, coach, I don't have time for this." That was never him. All of that never affected how he worked or what our workplace was like, and that's a credit to Colin. That's Chip Kelly talking. Mike, how significant is that to you?
Well, that's leaving football in the locker room and having it there. And Mike, you were in a locker room, the latest out of, you and I. It's been a long time for me. But my thought, when we start talking about distraction, sometimes I think that's an overused word. I think the Colin Kaepernick situation was a distraction to an owner, and what a fan base was thinking. Was the fan base continue to support that team, or how would they react, and how would advertisers react? And I'll just say this, you chime in. What to me, a locker room, when it comes down to it, you play for your teammates, but in the pros, it's also about self-preservation. I'm playing for my job. I'm worried about my job. So what Colin's doing, I may not agree with, but I'm worried about my job. I'm worried about, if I'm an O lineman, making my block, not let that guy get to Colin Kaepernick. If I'm a D lineman, making a tackle, getting a sack, whatever. But I'm worried about my little fiefdom, the team, but more about my self-preservation.
Well, yeah, and usually when this stuff comes up, it's in the understanding of when guys are doing things that are actually detrimental or bad, and you're saying, well, as long as he shows up and does the right thing at work, I'm willing to overlook that. Now, we're dealing with something here that is not an objectively bad thing that he's doing. I mean, far from it. At this point, you can't point to one thing that Colin's doing now and say he's doing anything that's not overwhelmingly positive here, and he's distanced himself from the kneeling and stuff. But to your point about the locker room too and distraction, I mean, a locker room for me was always, locker room talk came up a lot in bad ways over the last year. That was always a place where you could have discussions like this. And while disagreement is a part of that, it was at least a place where you come to it with enough mutual respect for each other because of your shared profession and the things you both know you've both done to get there, that it allows it to happen. So I think this is very meaningful to hear from a guy in Chip Kelly who I heard Bomani on when he was on with you guys say has had issues in the past, was seeming from the outside has been dubbed by people as someone who had issues at times with strong-minded black players.
So the way I view it is this: what I'm about to say, I believe 100% to be true. If this qualifies as being blackballed, then so be it. I'm not sure exactly how I'm defining blackball in this situation. I don't think there is an organized
collusion
on the part of the owners.
That's what it would be.
They're
It would be collusion.
Right. But I believe there is some number of NFL owners, and I'm not exactly sure how many. So there are 32 teams. It may be 10, 12, 16, something in that neighborhood of NFL owners who will just not have him on their team. Regardless of how much he may help or any other reason, they just will not. And that immediately cuts in half the number of places, or in whatever percentage that is, the number of places he might wind up. Now, if you look at the remaining teams, some of them don't need quarterbacks. Again, We don't know which owners we're talking about. I can guess on a few of them. I mean, there are a couple of obvious ones. Just using the New York Jets, who are a team that needed a quarterback going into this offseason. Their owner was the single biggest fundraiser for Donald Trump that there was in the presidential election. I don't think he was. I've said on the air in San Francisco during the Super Bowl, there was no conceivable chance the Jets were going to sign Colin Kaepernick. That just wasn't going to be on the list of options. Think of that what you will. But my point is, there you start knocking off teams that might have been interested in him in the first place, and I think that goes a long way towards him having a hard time finding a place to land. And then you look at, half the team. I mean, if you're Green Bay, New England, all that, you don't need a quarterback. So the options start to dwindle from there. I don't know if that qualifies as blackballed or not, but that's what I believe is happening.
Yeah, blackball has become the word, just like distraction has become the word. And for me, it hasn't really been either of them. Distraction to me means attention, and that's about role. If you want Colin Kaepernick as a backup quarterback, which whether it's a lot of whether you believe what's being said on a lot of different fronts here. And one of the reports is that Colin wants to be a starter, wants to be paid his worth as a player, which everyone should be entitled to.
Everybody can ask for what they want.
Everyone can ask for what they want. And the one thing you say is, well, these are individual owners who are allowed to make their own decisions. And that's a fine premise if you want to operate under that they can make that decision. But then what's the root of that decision? They're making that decision from a place of hate. They don't like what he did. And so that's why you laugh at the whole crowd that was saying, well, I disagree with what he was saying, but not how he did it. Or I said, I don't disagree with what he was saying. I disagree with how he did it.
Right.
Well, all of a sudden you're kind of exposing yourself because he's not doing that thing anymore. He's just out there giving to people and helping people and said he's not going to kneel. So now that's on you. If you choose to say, I'm an individual owner making that decision, just know that that's what you're supporting. That's the line of thinking that goes to. And you can't escape that because this is what it comes down to. You mentioned the public spin for all of this is you can't spin this the way you can domestic violence or any sort of other crime where you can say, oh, well, he's rehabilitated. We're committed to giving him a structure to help him change. There's no change in who Colin Kaepernick is. And so you can't sell that to a fan base that in the NFL is a different demographic than some of the other leagues that we've seen.
Yeah, listen, you may not like what he did, the socks that he wore, a shirt that he wore here and there, but you can't deny what the help he's giving out there now to people. I agree with you about the owners and how it looks, and Greeny, I agree with you. There are some owners that have just flat said he's not coming to our team. How many of that is, I don't know. What I think is going to happen from a football sense with Colin Kaepernick is I think he'll get a job after the draft. I think the draft will go. The teams will get these young quarterbacks wherever they're going to get them. And I don't know where they're going to get them. If it's a 2 in the first round, 3 in the first round, whatever. And I think that once that settles in, quite honestly, a landing spot for him, I think, what if Cleveland doesn't take a quarterback? If Cleveland doesn't take a quarterback at 12, they're not going to take one at 1. 12 would be the next spot. Will they take one there? Maybe they'll trade for more picks. Who knows? With their new train of thought, their thought process, if they don't think one of these quarterbacks is franchise-worthy, maybe they trade out of there to get more picks. So that, to me, is a team that could be a possibility after the draft. So I think after the draft, when the dust settles on where these quarterbacks have gone, who has the young quarterbacks, who has the old quarterbacks, where can there be a quarterback competition, where does he have a good shot to be a starter, that's when I think he'll end up signing with a team.
That's a good way of looking at it. So I just pulled up literally, the NFL standings. I will just name a team. Let's find teams where Colin Kaepernick is demonstrably better than what they currently have, right? Where there is no question but that it would be an improvement if they got Colin Kaepernick, and see if this seems like a logical place. In the AFC East, there is only one, and that's the Jets.
Right.
I'm assuming Tannehill is going to come back healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
Then there's only one, and that's the Jets. And I'm telling you right now, I don't believe that's an option.
I agree.
Yes.
In the AFC North, there's the Browns.
There's
the Browns.
The Browns, and to his point, to me, has been the overwhelming example, even if they do take a quarterback at 12. Because outside of one in Deshaun Watson, who we see as a complete package, the other two are seen as kind of projects. And in a best-case scenario for a team in the Browns that improved this offseason some, but is still not going to contend for the AFC North in any realistic chance or any sort of playoff sense there, makes a pretty decent stopgap guy if you want to give one of those young, inexperienced quarterbacks in Trubisky or Kaiser, who's looked to be the second coming off the board, a little time to develop behind a guy that's shown he can be confident with a terrible team. Why not this team? That's provided they do something with Osweiler, who's still on the books.
The one thing that we don't know is what their feeling is of Cody Kessler. And if they want to give him another shot, to maybe be the guy here. That's what we don't know.
Houston?
Well, I think Houston is, without a doubt, waiting on the Romo situation, right? They have to be they need to go get a starter. They are in prime position to get somebody to help lead that team. And the one thing about Kaepernick to Houston the one thing that you look at, the one number that you look at and you say, okay, I can deal with this, is the number 4. You only do 4 interceptions. You're going to rely on your running game. You're going to rely on your defense. You have some pretty good weapons on the outside. You don't really feel like you have to throw a ton. He doesn't turn the ball over, but I do think they have their eggs in the Romo basket.
That's one, though they definitely have that, and that situation's gotten strange and complicated in ways that I didn't think possible, but you're right. I mean, that team has a lot of these same calling cards that Colin Kaepernick's really good San Francisco 49er teams did, basically being built on defense first and foremost, but a ton of weapons on offense. And Bill O'Brien, we always give him credit for being that quarterback whisperer. There's a guy who put your money where your mouth is and start to tailor an offense to his skill set there.
Jacksonville.
That's one of those where you got the old school Tom Coughlin. Is he going to want, again, whether you think it's fair or unfair, that's going to be a thought process. I don't know what Tom Coughlin's feeling is, on Colin Kaepernick, but that would have to be a pretty important thing, wouldn't it, on his thought? Because I said it last year, and I'm not talking out of school, and I've said it before, Blake Bortles is not the answer there, and I think he's going to be gone, whether it's after this year or not. And I do think you'd rather have a youngish quarterback there for a few years and not a guy just for a year or two. So I just don't know if it passes the Tom Coughlin test.
Yeah, considering that's a guy that's already getting knocked by the league for doing some interesting things with the NFL offseason program, He doesn't seem like a guy that's going to fly with all of the outside attention that this would bring. Because then again, that's an important part to note in all of this is that, as Chip Kelly made notice, this isn't attention or distraction from inside. This is everyone looking in from the outside trying to make a big deal out of it.
This is Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. Denver.
Just think, if he wanted to take a pay cut, he probably would have been on Denver, huh?
I mean, that was all that talk last year about the possibility of a trade. Now he's a free agent.
Denver seems to be more and more going, again, you never know what the talk is that you want out there, but the talk sounds like they're going more away from Romo and saying we like what we have, we want to be a running team, but they don't have that great of a running offense to say we want to be a running team. So it would be nice to have a guy that could pass, and their passers are more passers from the pocket, and Simeon and Lynch if he's ready to go. That would be an interesting one to me as well, because he gives you that added dimension of, if you want to be that a great running team, well, you got a quarterback that can run as well.
It would have been a lot more interesting to me if this was still a Gary Kubiak team, because with that offense where you want to run the ball, play action, pass, on a team that you're right, got lumped into that we've got a great defense and run game narrative without having the run game to go with it.
They really did, wasn't it? Well, defense and running game, and we were like, well, wait a minute, where's the running game?
That's laziness, because those things usually pair together, so people just sort of lump that in there, forgetting that they really couldn't run the ball worth a damn.
Thing. You're right about that.
And then finally, in the NFC, there are really practically no options.
None.
You would have said the Bears, but they've signed Mike Glennon. That's the end of that. The Vikings have Sam Bradford. I mean, basically every team in the NFC is set at quarterback except for San Francisco, and he's obviously not going back there.
The two that the young and the old that you have probably Carson Palmer just about done, and you have Goff for the Rams just starting. So I think you're gonna let Goff kind of go now. I would imagine you say, okay, let's start the learning process.
You'd better.
There.
I mean, after everything they gave up to get that guy, if you're going to give up on him
I would
now,
think so. And then for Arizona, I think it's going to be another year before they look for that next guy, whether it's a young guy that they build with or an older guy that has a few years left, depending on the team
that's
around
a place where I could see, to change the subject, that's a team I could see in the middle of the first round taking Mitch Trubisky or someone like that. If you like that guy, you say, all right, we're going to have Carson another year or two. This guy needs a redshirt season. Let him come in and learn from a seasoned pro. That's the direction I could see that team going at quarterback, something like that. Much more likely, I think, than signing Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, I've heard some people say that Mitch Trubisky is like a quarterback that Bruce Arians would build in a lab, so you have a feeling that there could be some affinity there. But it does get interesting, and so it again goes back to, you do believe the reports where is Colin Kaepernick going to staunchly go out there and say, I want to be a starter, I want to be paid X amount, or when the draft shakes out, he can look at situations and say, all right, I can at least go in here and compete.
Right.
Because there's a couple of those spots where it waffles. There's a guy there, but we've seen in the past, if you can go in there and be better, I mean, Russell Wilson's the most recent example of that, where they had just paid Matt Flynn all that money,
right,
and all of a sudden you get a guy that comes in as a draft, now, albeit a draft pick there, but it could
still
be just
a third rounder.
Still a third rounder, but it just could be Colin Kaepernick coming in. I mean, $9 or $10 million for a quarterback in this NFL is
cheap.
chump change.
Yeah.
So coming in and usurping a low-level starter is not out of the realm of possibility for him.
It is Trade Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage in America's largest and most dependable networks. Mike and Mike, don't forget, baseball season is around the corner. Opening night, the Cubs and the Cardinals, presented by Firestone Tires. That's Sunday night. It begins 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN app. And then it's 8:30 Eastern on ESPN2 and the Watch ESPN app. Baseball season snuck up on us this year. I mean, this came sort of like out of nowhere. And along with baseball season come, of course, all of the delicacies of baseball stadiums.
Wow.
And with all credit in the world to Buster Olney, who sent this to all of us this morning, the Texas Rangers released a list of all of the concession items that are going to be available at their ballpark this year. And there are some very interesting ones, and no one loves concession items more than Golic's. So I would ask you, I know you've both had a chance to look over this list. We don't have time to get into all of them.
No. There's
so
nine.
Give me one that jumps off the page at you and says, this is one I absolutely have to have.
There are two. I'll give you my number two, and then you can do that, Mike, and then we'll give you number one. This is, again, for the Rangers at Globe Life Park, 19 new concession additions. My number two, I think, is the Crunchy Barbecue Burger. An all-beef patty stacked with smoked pulled pork covered in Sweet Baby Ray's signature barbecue sauce, pickled red onions, cilantro with a layer of nacho cheese, corn chips on top. Whew. Wow.
Heavy breathing.
So that doesn't sound good to me, but all right, go ahead.
Okay.
Doesn't sound good to me.
All right, number two, Texas Snowballs. Shredded brisket, rolled into balls, dipped in a funnel cake batter, and then deep fried and covered in powdered sugar. Only $9.50 to a steal.
Okay.
That's a steal.
I'll say right now, that was my number one. There is nothing to me.
That's not even food. Guys, you recognize that's
not
all
food.
the best food.
Every food group is in there.
When you combine multiple things that are good, like the old adage about, I like hair and I like butter, but the second you see a hair in the butter, it ruins both. Those are not foods. Shredded brisket is not meant to be rolled into a ball. Protein. It's not meant to be dipped in funnel cake and covered in powdered sugar. That's not what's supposed to happen.
Everything. You can mark this down. It's in the Geneva Convention. Everything is better deep fried.
Yeah.
Geneva
exactly
Convention.
Right. I mean, you have every food group. That's my number one. Again, shredded brisket rolled into balls, dipped in funnel cake batter, deep fried, covered in powdered sugar. Give me 10.
Okay. You guys saw. Did you have a favorite?
You have
number
one.
Number one.
That wasn't even your number one.
That was my number one. I have Crunchy Barbecue Burger and Texas Snowballs. Mike has Texas Snowballs and
heart palpitations. Never, ever quit. Shaved ribeye steak topped with mozzarella sticks, fried jalapenos, waffle fries, onion rings, and white queso.
That is pretty impressive.
That's how I want to die.
It's called the NEQ. Yeah. Never, ever quit.
It probably would kill you. Shaved ribeye steak, okay, topped with mozzarella sticks.
Not mozzarella cheese. Mozzarella sticks.
A whole other dish.
Yes.
Fried jalapenos. Waffle fries, onion rings, and white queso. Again, doesn't sound good to me. If you guys peruse this list, you did see they have one for me.
I did.
Did you see the one I would like?
You mean the one that's in the suite?
No.
Strawberry quinoa summer salad?
Yeah. Oh, no. No, I missed that.
The veggie wrap?
That does sound good. No, the Mediterranean nachos. Stacy's pita chips covered in chickpea hummus.
Not your wife's.
No, you've seen Stacy's pita chips. They're
kidding.
delicious.
It's a joke.
Covered in chickpea hummus and garlic, basil, tomato, and country olive salad. It's at the Ballpark Vegan Stand, which is in section 16, by the way.
I would push anybody out of the way who is trying to serve me.
You don't think that sounds good? All kidding aside, that wouldn't sound good.
There's nothing about that sounds good.
I would eat it because I actually dig hummus. The problem I have is calling that nachos is false advertising.
Yeah, really
nachos
is.
are designed to cause pain.
Nachos
There's
about
nothing
that.
painful
And
there.
you can buy that at the Ballpark Vegan Stand, which you'll never – places the Golics will never be. So you have a couple of your buddies coming over tonight for the game. How you feeling this year about your bracket? When you head to Walmart to pick up Coca-Cola 6-packs and Powerade 8-packs for tonight's tip-off, you have to check out this site with NCAA March Madness tips, Coke.com/alwaysready. It's full of fun stats and tips that you usually don't think about when you're filling out your bracket. So not only does Walmart have everything you need to be ready for the tip-off like Coca-Cola and Powerade, but if you head to Coke.com/alwaysready, they're helping you with your bracket as well.
You go to the Mike and Mike page on Twitter. You answer our poll question. Bruce, it's your turn to answer it right now.
Okay.
If you had to bet an amount of money that mattered to you on one of these two, which would you bet on? A, the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to win the championship this year. B, the Cleveland Cavaliers aren't going to make the finals this year. Which of those would you bet an amount of money that mattered to you on?
I believe they're going to be in the finals, even with the way that they've been playing thus far. I don't think there's any team in the East that can necessarily knock them off, especially with LeBron being there and Kyrie Irving. He'll figure things out. And I say he, talking about LeBron as far as how to communicate the necessity of urgency to his group of guys that he's playing with right now. The necessity is not get me the ball more instead of scoring layups like J.R. Smith did last night. He had a clear layup, but he threw a lob trying to get it to LeBron. Sometimes it's not about getting the ball to the star. It's about other people doing their job as well.
But as far as the Cavaliers, is it not about even getting the ball through the basket? It seems to be about stopping the other team from getting the ball in the basket. They're horrible defensively. So I guess, Brucey, why I went the other way on this, because either to bet to win the championship, not just get there, but win it or not make it. Defense, the personnel ain't changing, so it's going to have to be execution and just flat out want to. So how does that change? How does that ramp up the old flip switching when you get to the playoffs?
It starts with a film session, and the film session is watching when they were down in the NBA Finals last year. It wasn't their offense that got them the championship. It was the defense. It was Tristan Thompson being able to switch out to smaller guards and stay in front of them and contest shots against Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. It was also other guys. J.R. Smith came back. I mean, he played tremendous defense the past 2 years. So it's about getting guys to recognize and see things that they've done. Sometimes as an athlete, as a player, all you need to do is see a little success in something that you did prior to this particular moment. And then it starts to, seep in that, hey, no, I need to get back to that because the offense will take care of itself.
Right.
You got enough weapons. It's not about the offense. It's about the defense. I'm watching the attention to detail. Mirotic, he's hit 3 threes already, and you're still letting him shoot wide open three-point shots? No, you get up on him. And that's something that goes on in the game today. And maybe it's because I came in with Pat Riley and had Hall of Fame coaches, along the way that really paid attention to detail. And if you didn't do that job, you were sitting next to them. So for me, it's where is the attention to the detail of when guys are hot and taking their strengths away?
Well, and that of course, you go back. You played for Riley, you played for Popovich, and you were one of
Larry
the best,
Brown
and one of the
Ricky
best.
P.
Yeah,
that's Rick Pitino.
Yes. And you were, thank you, to his friends, he's Ricky P. But the point is that you were one of the best defenders in the league, also individually. Now, it's kind of a complicated question. I get that there's desire, there's want to, there's technique, there's film study, there's attention to detail. But at the end of the day, when you have 3 players on the floor who are just below average defenders, how good a defensive team can you be?
Well, even with your system, that helps guys who aren't necessarily the best defensively. And it's about buying into that system. It's about doing those things that are necessary. It's not a situation where you have guys that can't do it. It's don't let them shoot the three-point shot, period. And now you hold that player accountable. And if you're not going to do that, I will get someone else that can. Sometimes it's as simple as sitting the guy down for a while to show him what I'm talking about. I need you to do this. That's not what I want you to do. I'm not worried about you scoring. I'm worried about you being a stopper. Iman Shumpert is a tremendous athlete and a dog defender when he was in New York. And he's kind of lost that because he tries to score sometimes a little too much. That's not what they need from Iman. They need him to be that defensive guy that was in New York, that has the ability to stay in front of guys.
So the way the Cavs are playing right now, which of the three teams we keep talking about, the other three in the East, could take advantage of that? Is it still Boston, or is there another one with the way the Cavs are playing?
Right now, I like Boston. I like the way that they utilize the system of what Coach Stevens is doing there as far as getting the ball from one side of the floor to the other. You have a variety of options within that offense. And of course, Isaiah Thomas is playing fantastic basketball, but the addition of Al Horford, he's starting to get more and more comfortable with Brad Stevens' system. But that being said, the Cavaliers understand that the Boston Celtics are for real. And I guarantee you that if those two teams were happen to meet in the Eastern Conference Finals, you would see a different Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that respects the other team, a team that understands that, hey, if we don't come with what we need to come with, we will lose the opportunity of getting back to the finals.
Mike and Mike, Bruce Bowen here. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. As you look on the other side of the bracket and you see Golden State having won 9 straight games, they play Houston tonight. They're coming off a week in which they beat Houston and San Antonio in back-to-back nights, both on the road. And if you look at some of the numbers, and the numbers can tell you sometimes different things.
Don't do it.
It would suggest.
Don't do it.
That they've been a little better.
Did you hear me say?
Since Kevin Durant went out.
Man, please. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to give you a man, please.
Go ahead.
No, man, please.
Then expand on that if you would, please.
No, you have to understand that, yes, teams tend to find a way to win when a star player goes down. In 2005, it was Tim Duncan going down for us with a bad sprained ankle. And Rasho Nesterovic, as Stephen A. would love to say his name, Rasho Nesterovic, was tremendous for us. Now, are you trying to tell me that the future Hall of Famer Tim Duncan is not as good as Rasho Nesterovic? No, absolutely not. He is much better than Rasho, but it was the core. It was the core unit of guys being able to do things as far as not focusing on that one individual, but now doing it by committee. Everyone has a hand in the process of us moving forward, and that's what we're talking about, a team that won the NBA championship without Kevin Durant.
Right.
So now with Kevin Durant, because he can score so well, that was masked. So now he leaves. Now you have that core, which is necessary in order to get things back on track.
It just dawned on me that Rasho Nesterovic is a word that James Brown might enjoy saying.
Rasho Nesterovic.
I mean, you could throw that in the middle somewhere, and you might not even notice.
I nailed that, didn't I?
Let's go to the other one then, and let's say the 9-game winning streak, the last time Golden State lost was when they rested everybody. So maybe rest is good.
I'm a big proponent of rest. Rest is necessary in this game. And I know there's a lot of people I can't stand when people talk like that. Well, the people paid a lot of money.
But they did.
And hey, let me finish. The people paid a lot of money.
They did.
And so I love the fact that Adam Silver says, you know what, there is a flaw in our system here. We can't have these huge games, especially with all the money that has been donated to the NBA from the TVs.
Yeah. That's the point. It wasn't a donation. At least it wasn't meant to be.
but it's something that I think needs to be looked at, because 4 games in 5 nights, and then you don't have the freshness and what we love about this game as far as the athleticism and things like that. You have guys that are tired. That's why Steph Curry against Minnesota, he was missing shots that he normally makes. Now, people were saying, oh, Steph, it's over with. He was overrated. Nah, he just needed rest. Golic, when you got a Thursday night game coming off of a Sunday game, your body is not, it hasn't recuperated.
You don't put the pads on. You rest more during the week. And I remember Steve Kerr saying about Steph Curry, gang, he didn't forget how to shoot.
No.
He's just tired, and he needs
and people didn't want to hear that.
And the sports science is proving that now, that now they just have to figure out between the season length and back-to-back scheduling.
And that's what you have right now, the analytics with the NBA. These guys are really going to work right now, whereas before you used to play a game 2 days or 3 days after the NBA All-Star game. Now it's been extended. They're going to extend the season next year, where you're taking away 2 preseason games. So it's being worked.
And now, insurance-minded speeches from Geico.
Hardship. My grandmother would go through it every month to pay her insurance bill. First, she would handwrite a paper check, in cursive. Then, using her own tongue, she would wet a stamp for an envelope. Today, however, we need not weary our hands and tongues. Today, we can pay our Geico bill with the Geico app. Away with hardship, in with bill pay on the Geico app. Thank you.
Brucey Bowen is here in our studio as the rest of the country joins us. Two different things on this rest issue, very quickly. Nick tweets, if NBA players need rest, why can't they skip practice instead of missing games? My only experience around an NBA team, I did cover one for a few years, 20 years ago. I know everyone makes fun of it, but the point is I was there. It doesn't make any difference who it was.
Right.
But what I do remember about that was the stars on that team, when they had these busy schedules, when they would go through a thing where they had back-to-backs or 4 games, they didn't practice. Phil Jackson was the coach. He would give the stars a day off from practice. They'd watch film, they'd sit there, and everyone else would practice. So you can joke about it, but that is actually what they used to do.
They used to do. I remember Gary Payton didn't practice a lot. And, you think about we live in such a society where everybody thinks that they're equal, where everybody's not. I love the fact that Michael Jordan led the example of practicing, and he had to take days off when Phil said it. He knew that if he didn't go out and practice hard, then Scottie Pippen wouldn't practice hard because Scottie would say, well, why isn't Michael doing? He understood the leadership role of what he had as far as responsibility. You get into this scenario where now you have players that are I think it's slightly different today. The 4 games in 5 nights or 4 games in 6 nights. And you're going one part of the country to the other part of the country where I remember one year, Greeny, we played the New York Knicks when I was in Miami. We won in overtime. We beat them. Then we went to San Antonio and lost. That was a long flight. We got in late. It wasn't productive for us to be able to go that distance. But again, I go back to the process of what Adam is doing now. Adam is making sure that we can bridge the gap so that we don't have these holes. And at the end of the day, that's all we can be happy with is that there's communication going on between owners and the league, and it's not being run with an iron fist, kind of like David used to.
Correct. No, I agree with you totally. That is the biggest part of the solution. One other tiny solution, Mike, that will not happen, but that would actually address at least part of this, is to place a greater significance on seeding, which is to say, right now, if you're the 1 seed, Popovich just the other day said that being the 1 seed doesn't make that much difference because having home court advantage in a series is an advantage of one game.
One game. You lose one game.
You lose one home game, and you've or more to the point, you win one road game, you've overcome it.
Yep.
So is there a way of increasing that? Is there a way of increasing, make it another extra home game, make it 5 versus 2 in the first round or something like that? Just something that will at least make
extra incentive
to making regular season games count and making teams want to win, incentivizing winning.
Well, I think the incentive is obviously the goal of championships, but I think one thing you have to take into account is how young the league is now, Greeny.
Yeah.
You have guys that should be sophomores in college right now, and it is hard. A lot of coaches that I talk to, the first thing they say is like, man, I have to teach these kids things that they should already know. So you're dealing with a younger group of guys now. Now, we talk about your son played AAU.
Yeah.
Now, in AAU, you might play 5 games in one day. So if you lose a game, it's no big deal. You just go on to the next game. A lot of that mentality is seeping into the game right now. So when you talk about, how can we get it more where teams care more? Well, I think a lot of it's been set up with some AAU basketball. But at the same time, again, it's about changing what's going on. And the NBA junior NBA program is doing that as well. We're trying to limit more games that people are playing as far as kids are concerned so that they do take pride in the process of a loss and they pay attention to, getting back after
move on quickly after a loss.
Exactly, because that happens a lot because they don't this is what they've been doing the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. So that loss doesn't hurt. So we need the loss to hurt kids back in again like it did when we played. I remember in the AAU system, we played a game. If you lost in that tournament, you were going home. You didn't play for another 2 weeks. So that meant practice. So what happens in practice? You learn to become a better player. We're losing a lot of that today.
No, I think that's actually a really interesting point. More practice and less games at a younger age. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. You can test drive Snapshot even if you have insurance with another company. See how much you can save before you switch. Scottie Pippen was on the jump yesterday with Rachel and Tracy McGrady. And did you hear what he said?
I didn't hear what he said.
Okay, you're going to like this. It's fascinating to me. They were talking about the Knicks, who had been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs the day before, and Rachel asked Scottie where he places the blame. This was fascinating.
To be honest with you, I'm going to have to go at my old coach, Phil Jackson. I think he just hasn't put the right pieces on the floor. I give a lot of credit to Carmelo, who's been very professional in getting through this 82-game season, and now he's being benched to some degree. They've taken a lot of his minutes away. But, you know, this team really just hasn't had it, and they hasn't had it since Phil Jackson landed there. I mean, there's not been any upside to think that the New York Knicks was going to be a contender. And I just, you know, I feel bad for Carmelo having to go through this and having to deal with it, but he got a great contract, so I'm sure he has.
All right, and what you did not hear in that is that Tracy McGrady then made some comments, and then they asked Scottie, do you think they need to get rid of Phil in New York? And he said yes. Scottie, this is his coach.
Well, this is the same guy that thinks he's better than Michael Jordan.
Scottie we're talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about Scott. Who else are we talking about?
LeVar? I thought we were talking about LeVar Ball.
Okay. Well, that's true, too.
He, too, does.
But you know what? It's a shame because this is typical Scottie. You know, take ownership of some things and put the blame where it needs to go. Now, the Knicks, it's about the players. The players have to do a better job. I can't sit up here and say, oh, it's the coach's fault. It's that when you're on the floor, you have an opportunity to affect change. Carmelo has an opportunity to affect change in that organization. It's not about Phil. It's not about, you know, others. It's about that group of guys making sure that they can bring the fight that Oak had when he was being escorted out.
First time skydiving? Sure is. Okay, you just open the door like this and you jump. Oh, wait. Should we be like in tandem? Tandem? That's a great idea. Are you a certified instructor? No, but I love parachutes and I love people. Here we go.
You wouldn't take chances with an uncertified skydiving instructor. Don't do it with your finances. Find a certified financial planner professional today at letsmakeaplan.org. CFP. Work with the highest standard.